This is part 2 of my door building video for Curiosity Inc. This is a door I built a little over 3 years ago, and this is going to be similar to the back door that I'm going to build. Except I'm doing raised panels, so it'll be almost identical to this, just a different size. Now, it's pretty obvious with this door that I wasn't as skilled or didn't have the access to the proper tools when I built this. And a lot of you might be skeptical on my method of not using mortise and tenon joints and just using screws. But this door has been exposed to the elements for almost 3.5 years now. And this is still the original coat of paint, by the way. And there's no signs of weakening of the joints or anything like that, so I'm fairly confident that the screw joinery is sufficient for this application. I apologize for the wind noise in a lot of these clips. It's very windy today. A lot of the clips won't be in chronological order, but they will be in sequential order. I'm starting on the exterior door, and I've just laid out the mullions to figure out where the panels are going to go. I want the panels to be equal width, so this one will be the same width as this one. So I think I've got it laid out to where I can make that happen, and this window will be perfectly square. So here's this door frame all put together. Now the next step will be making the raised panels. And again, I don't have a shaper or anything to make panels on, so I just kind of developed a way to do it on the table saw. And in the end, it looks pretty close to what an actual raised panel would look like. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to be making the panels out of 1x10, and that is 9¼ by 3/4 inches. And the panels need to be 8¼ wide. I'm going to give it a little bit of room in there just for expansion and contraction. And these are just scraps I had. They were from a staircase in a bunkhouse I built. I'll probably do a video of that later in case anybody's interested to see that. But these will work fine. They've got some nails in them, but I'll just pull those. That'll all get cut off anyways. And I'll show you how I set up the table saw to cut these raised panels. Now that I have my panel stock cut to length, I'm going to go rip it to width on the table saw. Now that I have these ripped to width, I figure that about a 2-inch angle cut on the sides will look proportionally correct for the raised part in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these out. Now, in order to find the angle that this is going to be cut at, I come over here and I'm going to move the fence to 1/2 inch. And that way, with 3/4, it'll leave a 1/2 inch on one side, and then when I go to do the other side, it'll leave a 1/4 inch in the middle. Now I'm going to raise up the blade. And then with these reference points I made, I'm just going to angle the blade until I can see the outside hitting that line. Just as the tooth of the blade comes in contact, and then I'll lock it down. And that just happens to be about 7.2 degrees or so. So that'll give a nice profile on the panel. I did a test cut here on a piece of scrap, and you can see the general idea. I know when some people make doors, they just cut it right off at an angle, but I like to leave just 1/8 or less of reveal. It just gives it some depth and a little more definition when you leave that little 1/8 inch. So now we can begin cutting the real panels. Gonna sand this off first. It's not fitting tightly against the fence, so I'll do that and then come back and cut the other side. I got these sanded off, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut the other side. Now I have all the panels made, so I can begin sanding them. The only thing with doing this on a table saw is sometimes you'll get mistakes like that where the bottom slips into the blade because it's so thin it can't sit on there properly, but I can clean that up with a chisel and square it off. So to fix this, I'm just going to take my speed square, square it up with the top, and actually I'll just scribe a line with the chisel. And then I can go ahead and just chisel it off bit by bit. I'll just cut into it. There, that's cleaned up. I'll go over it with the sander again and make it look nice. So here I've got the panels pretty much in the door, and I'll just show you how I put the molding on. So I miter each end. I'll miter the first end and then butt it in. And when it's still, I'll just make a mark there and go cut it. So the panel's in place. And I just put this in here like that. And just nail it in. So to begin preparing the muntins, I cut my piece to length and I just notched little notches for it to sit in with the jigsaw, and then where they cross in the middle I notched out halfway. So we'll go ahead and put these in and see how they fit. Now that the muntins are in, I will do a similar process with the molding that I did here to create a rabbeted edge to accept the glass. To start installing the molding around the muntins, I take my finished piece, miter it 45 degrees on the end, butt it into where it needs to go, and then just make a mark at where to cut it, and then I'll go cut that on the miter saw. Now that I have that cut and ready to go, I usually take the thickness of this, which is 3/8, that's the thickness of the rabbeted edge, and add an 1/8, which is the thickness of my glass, to make a square line. And then I just take my combination square and use it as a gauge to gauge where to nail this on. So once I have it gauged, I grab my brad nailer. And nail it in place. And that gives an edge for the glass to sit on and has a nice profile on the back side on the inside of the door. Now I have this piece of molding on. In my opinion, it just adds a little to the door. It just looks a little too bland without it. As I was looking through my scrap glass, I saw these, but they're just a 1/2 inch too short to work for the windows. I'm gonna have to cut out of new pieces. I've got a pane of glass here that I think I'll be able to get all 4 of. Now it's time to cut the glass. So my pieces need to be 10 3/4 by 10 3/4. So I'm going to cut a piece out of here that's 21.5 by 21.5, and then I can just divide it into 4 pieces. So I like to cut the glass on a nice even surface, and I'm using a pistol grip glass cutter that I also use for stained glass. I find this, you can just get a steadier, more consistent grip than the pin style cutters. So I line up my straight edge and then give it a score. Just broke that part off. And then just give it a light tap to crack it. And then I'll measure this way. Line up my straight edge. Cut. Score, I should say. Now I can divide this into 4 pieces. There's 2 already. And that's how you cut glass. Now let's make sure these fit. Nice. One thing I'm gonna do before I put the glazing putty in is put these things in. They're called glazing points, and that just holds the glass basically until the glazing cures, and even after it cracks or whatever. And they just go in I just push them in with the, so I just set it on here, just kind of wiggle it in, try not to crack the glass, make sure it goes beyond the plane of the rabbeted edge, and that'll hold the glass in there. Now to complete the glazing process, I'm going to be using this DAP 33 glazing putty, and that's just going to get mushed in here and then scraped off with a glazing bar to create a nice 45-degree angle, and that will waterproof this window and create a nice seal from the glass to the wood. Take the glazing putty out of the container, and it's a bit stiff, so I want to knead it like bread dough. It's really cold right now. It's only about 40 degrees today, so this probably isn't the best conditions to be doing this in, but you want to do it when it's warm. But the only reason for that is it takes longer to set. It'll still cure properly once it gets warm. These next couple clips, it was a bit too windy to use the audio from the video that I took, so I'm just going to voice over it. So I just take the glazing putty and work it into the cracks, and then once that's done, I take my glazing bar and pack it down like you'll see in the next clip. So the day I applied the putty, it was only probably a degree or two above freezing, so it wasn't really working as well as I had hoped. So I just added some linseed oil to the mix, and that improved it a little bit. So I just run my bar at a 45-degree angle, slowly scraping off the excess, and that produces a nice clean seal to the wood and glass. And then I carefully scrape the excess off, making sure not to damage the finished product, and then just kind of clean up the spots that didn't turn out as well as I'd like them to. It works a lot nicer when it's warm out. And then I go and just touch up the corner. Make it a nice clean corner, ready for paint. And that's exactly the way it goes for the rest of the window. Now I've got the window finished with the glazing putty, so I'm gonna paint this door. So I'm gonna start painting this door, and my method for painting the window, I assiduously avoid using painter's tape just because it makes a mess, and I just don't like it at all. You get a way cleaner product if you just paint onto the glass. This is just my method of doing it. I have no formal education. Everything I've learned autodidactically, or have had someone I've been working for teach me. I'll eventually just scrape this off once it dries with the razor blade, and you get a way better seal to the glass because you don't leave a 30-second of an inch or so paint on the glass. Will seal it, and it's just a way nicer. So pretty much the final step in preparing the doors is to scrape the paint off the glass. So I take the tip of the blade and just put a score about a 32nd or a 64th of an inch away from the edge of the putty where it intersects the glass. and then I take the edge of the blade with a pretty healthy angle on it and just peel the paint away. And then the back side needs to be done, of course, and then I can clean up the little spots like that, and that provides a nice seal onto the glass and protects the putty from drying out and getting water behind it. Here's what I came up with for the door casing around the exterior door. This piece I planed down to 1 inch for the plinth blocks. That'll match the rest of the house, I think. So I'll just cut that to length when I get there. And then this piece is a 1/4 inch by 1.25 inches, and it's the fillet that will go on the bottom of the casing. And then the casing cap, the closest I could get to match to the rest of the house, with the bits I had, was to come up with something like that, and that'll go on top of there. And then this 2x10, it's got an imperfection in it there, but I'll rip it down to whatever matches in the rest of the house, and it'll look roughly like that. And then the sides of the casing will just be regular 1x4. So today I'm just getting ready to head to the potter's house and hang the doors. All the doors and tools I need I've got loaded up, so hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, and I'll see you when I get there. So here we are, I'm just getting unloaded here, and I see Alex brought his ambulance, which is really cool. So I've got the bathroom door hung, and it closes nice. And the back door as well, cased out. So that's my door video on the Potter house. If you enjoyed that, I'll be doing more videos, so stay tuned for that, and see you on the next project.